A lot of folks may claim that the ACC has been playing a group of five football for several seasons now. And the ACC was headed toward a situation in which they would probably be lowered somewhere close to group of five level if somebody did not intervene. And that somebody's their old buddy ESPN. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. Best breakdown, discussion, debate, analysis. That's what we do. And we appreciate you stopping by. Conference rankings are coming up here very soon. So what we've done over the last week is we have gone through all the conferences. Check out the videos. We posted the Big Ten this morning to finish out the SEC, the Big 12, and the ACC. We break it down like nobody else. So just check it out. We just don't throw crap at the wall, or we just don't basically say this team won the big games and this conference won the big games and they got the best record, therefore they're the best. No, we do a seedings analysis, winning percentage analysis versus their opponents in the other conferences, meaning point differential analysis, all of it. So we got to put it all together. So I believe we're going to do that live. So that would be the best way to do that, is live with all of you. So we'll present all the metrics, all of the results comparisons that we have compiled by the ACC, the Big 10, the Big 12, and the SEC, and take your calls. I believe we will do that on Friday. So subscribe, hit the bell for the notifications to know when we go live. That way you don't miss presentations like this, because I had a busy day. I learned at just about 9:15 that the ACC had finalized this deal with ESPN to extend its contract that was going to run out in 2017 or 2027, a 12-year contract that started in 2016. And that gets extended out another 10 calendar years out to 2036. So we will check that out. We will go through the article. And as we always do with these situations, we will go through, take your calls, the links in the chat, and also we will go through my analysis as we go through each point. Amazon links in the description section of all the videos. We appreciate you stopping by Amazon. So don't do it for Amazon's sake, but you already shop at Amazon. Many of you, most of you, it's alarming when you look at the numbers of people that shop on Amazon. It's basically 2/3 of the country. You shop on Amazon already, please use the link that we provide. It's in the description section of the video. You grab that link and it's the same shopping experience, and it's the way that you can contribute to the Voice of College Football without spending a penny. All right. One more piece of business to take care of before we get into the ACC and its new contract with ESPN. The book is Disputed National Champions. And we are simulcasting on the Clemson, Miami, and Florida State channels because of the obvious tie to the ACC. So we would like to highlight, sorry, Clemson fans, you did next to nothing in the 1990s, so not a whole lot of Clemson here. Florida State, Miami, yes, a lot of Florida State and Miami in our 1990s. Disputed National Champions Historical Reset. You will enjoy it. I'm going to start posting the reviews that have come in on Amazon. Because that's going to be more effective than me saying this is a great book. You'll love it. You're a college football nerd. You're a junkie. You will love this book. Yeah, I will let the people speak for themselves. So we appreciate everyone who has left a review. We've received some nice comments. And for those people that leave the comments here in the chat and then comments to the channel about the book, it would be so amazing of you. You would go to Amazon. If you would go to Amazon and leave a review there, that would be phenomenal. And again, you can grab that link down in the description section. All right. We are talking ACC, and we've got a call here. So before I've said one word about the ACC contract, we've got two calls now. So I guess we will wait to get into the nuts and bolts of this ACC contract and take the calls. Some of you folks know from watching multiple years here at the Voice of College Football that we do a State of the Union, State of the Voice of College Football. get the point there. State of the Voice of College Football live stream, and we will announce when that's coming up because it's going to be very soon in the next few weeks. Man, we've got a lot of things to talk about. A lot of great initiatives here at the Voice of College Football to let you know about. I will say that from a financial standpoint, the months of January, February, March, until we get back into spring ball, despite all the things going on with player acquisition and movement across the landscape of college football, those are the lean months financially here at the Voice of College Football. So we would appreciate anything that you could do there. David Greenshield's on the line to talk to me football, apparently. David, how are you?
Yes. Let's talk some ACC football, Mark. Good. How you doing, Mark?
Good.
How you doing this evening?
I'm good.
Excellent.
What
Just
you
want to
got?
make sure you can hear me all right?
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to talk. I wanted to talk a little bit about this contract. I find it interesting that the ACC and the ESPN have cut this deal. So, are we going to get ACC bias along with ACC bias and SEC bias along from ESPN going forward here, Mark?
No, sir.
Or
There's only SEC bias. There's only SEC bias allowed. No, that they are the whatever.
Well, we've already got enough of that.
What derogatory term you want to put on the ACC's relationship with ESPN not being the SEC? They're, the red-headed stepchild sort of deal. That's what they are.
Right. Well, my question is to you is this: do we still see programs still trying to get out of the ACC? Because I thought I had heard some news lately that there were some programs that were trying to jump ship from the ACC, especially with the way the two major power conferences are trending right now, as far as the two dominant conferences in college football.
So it's been a year and a few months that Florida State has sunk, who knows what the bill is at this point for legal fees and so forth, sunk multi-millions of dollars into a court battle. And then the ACC, of course, countersued. So you got two court battles going on between the ACC and Florida State. And then Clemson jumped into the mix a couple months later. And so I don't know when the last time, it's probably been since, hang on just a second, somewhere around October was the last time that they were actively in court, but I guess they're still paying attorneys and so forth. Yeah. They were now suddenly the rhetoric has changed, and we'll get to that in just a second, but the rhetoric has changed in terms of no. We were testing the waters and we were just seeing what our options might be and letting the ACC know that we were hoping to maintain our relationship, but we would just need a few things. The rhetoric has softened considerably.
Right. Well, I'm just wondering, just overall, how you see the long-term prospects of this conference. I mean, I know this deal with ESPN is a sweetheart deal. I believe this runs through 2036, if I'm not mistaken, right, Mark?
Yes.
At least that's the headline that I saw.
Yep.
So, obviously over 10 years here. My question is when you look at this conference, you've seen two major programs dominate this conference for over 10 years. Pretty much it's just been a Clemson, Florida State conference for over 10 years. Actually, probably even closer to 15 years, if I'm not mistaken, right? Since the early years of Jimbo at Florida State. I do think, I will say this, I think there are some programs trending up in this conference. I do think that, first of all, and I was just taking a look at this, North Carolina, and I'm not just saying this because of Bill Belichick, but I'm also saying that this because there's a nice recruiting footprint there in North Carolina. I just took a look at it, Mark. I think they are right now fourth or fifth when it comes to the states producing the most NFL players, if I'm not mistaken, the state of North Carolina.
I would not be surprised. So North Carolina in particular has been one of the epicenters of population shift for the last few decades. I know that the high school football play is increased considerably in Virginia
Mhm.
as well. So that would not surprise me. I would go Texas and Florida are always just about
Yeah.
even.
Right.
California is now a distant third, if not fourth, to Georgia, but those are the top
Georgia's come up.
four. And
Right.
Alabama is surprisingly really good
Yeah.
in high school
Right.
football, despite population gaps. It's risen considerably recently. Yeah, I would think that those would be the ones. Well, Louisiana per capita is crazy good. They produce the most NFL players, the state
Yeah.
of Louisiana per capita. And then, yeah, North Carolina, you said fifth? Sure. Yep.
Right. And that's what I'm saying is that if Belichick can recruit the base, the collectives could be, I don't know where they're situated with the collectives because that's always going to be a key, obviously, going forward in the modern day of college football. But you have a base to start with. Mac Brown was able to win games there. It's a conference where you can win games in there. So it's going to be interesting to see their trajectory in the next 2 years, obviously, because I think a lot of people think this is just a way stop for him, by the way, that this is just like, him just trying to get his feet underneath him. Maybe he builds the program and then he, finds the sweetheart NFL job in a couple of years and then he probably jettisons. But I just think when you look at this conference, I think North Carolina has potential with him in the next few years. Syracuse with Fran Brown had a very nice year this year, Mark. So maybe there's potential there. Maybe.
Well, there's some potential there. We know that in fairly modern times that Syracuse has been a really good football program. McPherson, McNabb,
Mm-hmm.
so forth and so on. Marvin Graves, those
Mm-hmm.
guys.
Marvin Graves.
But the
Yeah.
thing that I would say about this particular Syracuse team that we just watched play this fall, I would liken them to the Sam Hartman led Wake Forest teams that were so dependent on one guy's right arm and two or three
Mm-hmm.
receivers that I don't necessarily know that he's built a really. Obviously, he's only been there, Fran Brown, for 1 year, so he's not built much of anything or had the time to. But I don't want to buy into the Syracuse 10-3 record on the right hand of Kyle McCord throwing for more yardage than anyone in the history of the ACC and two or three receivers playing out of their minds and really not much else. I don't want to discredit that they had nothing else, but it was one of
Well,
those deals.
well, I guess what I'm going with too, also, Mark, is the coaching is pretty solid. I do think Fran Brown is a solid coach. We'll see what Belichick can do. I certainly think that if you take a look, I mean, well, Dabo's obviously proven. We know what Dabo is capable of. Well, and that may be the past with Dabo. I get that, but overall, I think that it's a conference. I mean, Georgia Tech showed some things this year at times. You know, I mean, what do you think of the long-term prospects of this conference's ability to compete and maybe compete in the playoff long term, where they could, let's say, have a team that gets in and makes a playoff run, or the days of Clemson and Florida State and those programs in a program out of this conference competing for a national championship over with?
You're reminding me of a video that I posted probably right after the 2016 season in which Clemson upset Alabama to win the national championship.
Hmm.
Florida State won an Orange Bowl. The ACC went something like 11-3 in postseason play when postseason play was more valid, and they had a really good regular season. And based on the results, you could have argued that they were better than the SEC that year. Most people would not have. But anyway, the point was, okay, look at what we just witnessed. Look at the state of the Clemson program. Look at where Florida State was at the time. We didn't think they were
Hmm.
going away with one of the better coaches in the nation, or so we thought. And then I pointed to some other good situations there. Louisville, Bobby Petrino at the time. And again, population shift.
Hmm.
And there was a lot of rhetoric out of the ACC that they understood, okay, even though our heart and soul and legacy is in basketball, we understand the future and the money is football. And this is just the beginning. So I didn't necessarily buy into that, but I was just saying, okay, there's evidence of this. So, yes, they have the heart of Atlanta, which when I mentioned Louisiana producing the most per capita
Yeah.
in terms of a state, the Atlanta area and Houston are the two most prolific in terms of a metro area. And you mentioned North Carolina, Virginia, and now the the conference obviously stretches all the way up and down the coast and beyond. Yes. Now, there's one interesting tidbit in this article from ESPN concerning money, but they don't go into specifics.
Yeah.
But it states in there that the ACC will only be a few $1 million behind per team the Big Ten and the SEC.
Wow.
That
See, that's a little surprising to me.
it's surprising.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily believe it.
Well, that's where I was going next with, because obviously in today's day of college football, we not only have to take a look at the coaching, their ability to build staff, we have to take a look at the recruiting footprint, but we also have to take a look at the money in the collectives. Do they have the collectives put together to go out and invest in, whether it be infrastructure, certainly recruiting, work in the portal, to what they're going to have to pay portal players to come to their school as well? That's going to be the interesting thing. I mean, I know that you've had some population shift into these areas, but remember, when you look at the North, Mark, what are the advantages there? You have a lot of people that go to school in the North move out of the North, but a lot of northern schools, though, produce a lot of CEOs, Mark. They produce a lot of money people, and you've got that in the North that can invest. And I don't know if you have that down there in the Southern programs. That's a challenge that SEC programs are going to be facing. I'm wondering if that's also a challenge that ACC programs are going to be facing as well.
Well, that's something that I've heard discussion about that seems to be founded on fact, about the disparity that you're talking about between the North and the Big Ten in particular and the South.
Mm-hmm.
I would think that it only makes sense that, again, population shift and the status of a lot of these schools is extremely high. North Carolina, Virginia in particular, Duke, although it's a small school,
mm-hmm.
that again, I would have to see numbers. Dace comes on here. He says the same thing over and over and over. He's adamant about that the Big Ten is now able to play big boy ball and knock out the SEC financially. I've seen it elsewhere. I've not seen numbers to substantiate that.
Right.
We do have, and again, this also goes to a school's willingness to mix money,
mm-hmm.
Paths of money. Stanford, they've got all the money in the world. Their endowment academically is unbelievable. They're like a small country. Or maybe not a small country in this world, maybe a mid-level one.
Well,
and North Carolina's got a huge endowment.
Mm-hmm.
But are they willing, or can they, by their bylaws and so forth, their structure, dip into those places to, back up, support, fortify their athletics?
Yeah.
I don't know that.
Well, see, that's going to be the interesting thing going forward, because I do think that because of the recruiting bases, I do think because of the coaching, there are programs in here that can succeed and can succeed on a high level. It's just, I wonder, because right now, with where the Big Ten is situated long term, I think the Big Ten is really situated to succeed long term and surpass the SEC going forward because of the dollars, because of the money people. Well, and you still have some solid recruit. They have solid recruiting bases in the Midwest. I mean, Ohio, Pennsylvania still produce talent, maybe not quite like they did before, but they still produce enough talent to supplant what they can be able to do if they can go down in the South and maybe out West and get some players on top of it. So, yeah, I mean, if I'm these programs in the South, you have to have your collectives put together. Now, Texas, they're well situated, because who had the highest payroll in college football this year?
Well, that's a good question for me. Everyone thinks it was Ohio State, but it was Texas, correct?
Right. Actually, Ohio State was third. I believe Oregon was second. That Phil Knight money, So that's what I'm saying. The power players are I mean, Dace's point is well taken. Now, the only pushback I would say to that is that it doesn't always buy you happiness. That's why I make the Texas A&M argument, because they got a lot of dough. Look at them. They've got a lot of dough, and it didn't buy them happiness with that recruiting class that they got, right?
Well, it's the old adage, and it's like success on the playing field. Can you win with talent? Of course, you have to have talent, but if you have bad coaching, bad management, all those things
That's true.
surrounding the talent, you're not going to win. But the talent is a must. So the money is a must, but that doesn't guarantee winning. You got to be able to allocate it and have half a brain to know what to do with the money. But you have to have the money.
That's true. That's true. I mean, if you're taking a look at the programs, this would be interesting. Do you ever do like a stock up, stock down on certain programs, Mark? Maybe I'm trying to give you some off-season fodder here. I heard some off-season material here, Mark.
Our buddy Corey Bratta just suggested I do that the other day.
As you were talking about, like if Mark Rogers is buying stock, he's buying stock in this program because their prospects in the next 5 to 6 years are playoffs, contending for national titles, maybe even winning a national title.
In the ACC?
Yes.
Outside of the obvious?
Outside of the obvious.
I'm buying stock in relative to what we expect.
Yes.
Georgia Tech.
Okay.
I'm buying stock in North Carolina.
Okay.
And if I get one more, I'm buying stock in Louisville.
Interesting. That's relative to what kind of expectations, though?
Well, yeah, I hesitated on Louisville just because there are fairly high expectations there, but they are pumping money into their NIL.
Right.
I have no thoughts about Louisville being a rich school, not a rich school. It doesn't sound like it would be a rich school, but.
Well, those Kentucky schools, I heard they got some of that horse money or something going on down there. You know what I mean? Some of those, from the Derby or whatever.
What I do know is that they love their football. They actually outdistanced Miami over the last 10 years in regards to ACC TV ratings in the number 3 spot behind Clemson and Florida State. So we'll see this in this article on ESPN in regards to how the ACC is going to deal with this newfound money from ESPN. They're going to not equally distribute this money, as we well know, because this is their move to keep Florida State and Clemson and keep them appeased. But a school like Louisville is going to they're going to benefit from that pay structure because they're one of the top 4 or 5 schools in the conference. If you include the basketball, maybe North Carolina surpasses them, but they're in the top 5. And then Jeff Brom, not just that I think he's an excellent coach, but look where he's located at his alma mater. He may never leave. He may be fine with coaching there, and he may be a 15-year guy there.
Well, see, okay, here's where I would go. I would buy North Carolina stock because of location, maybe the Belichick factor, at least over the next few years. I would still buy some Miami stock, Mark.
Sure.
Call me crazy, but I still think that Cristobal and, I've had some reservations there, but I think they're going to be able to attract enough talent specifically in that conference to be competitive and to be able to make a playoff. I don't know if they can make a run in the playoff, but I can definitely see within the next year or two them making the playoff and at least winning a playoff game.
Yeah, so I don't disagree with you, but we were, again, going based on expectations.
Okay.
And the expectations at Miami is that should be a top 10 or 15 team in the country. I know that hasn't happened in forever.
Well, that's what I'm saying. They can do that. I think within the next 2 years, they'll do that.
Absolutely. I would rate Miami. If I was going to buy stock, I'd buy Miami over Louisville, Georgia Tech, and whoever else I just named. North Carolina, I would buy Miami. I would lay a small wager right now that Miami will have a better record in football over the next 10 years than those 3 schools.
Dump the Florida State stock. I hope they were dumping it last year Norvell could be on borrowed time. I mean, how many times can you work the portal to build up a roster to make a playoff run, right?
Well, if this is truly a stock game we're playing, I'm buying Florida State. They're 2 and
Well,
10.
because
They were 2
you're
and
never
10
going to
last
get
year.
it lower than it is right now. That's
Yeah.
true. That's true. You'll never get it lower than it is right now. That's a penny stock, right, Mark?
It is a penny stock. Yes, they were so incredibly awful this year. It's just hard to fathom how bad they were this year.
Yeah, but see, that's what I'm wondering. Does Indiana go that route next year with Google Me guy? I mean, well, no, now they've got some talent to come in at Indiana, but the conference is only getting stronger, though. That
Yeah.
conference is going to be even stronger next year than I think it was this year.
That's probably not going to happen, but if it happened at Florida State, it can happen at Indiana.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Well, I definitely see you. By the way, going to be interesting to see their preseason win total next year. By the way, so you have people
Yeah, don't
calling
know
you?
what that is. I know that those are already out. So I have seen some of those. All right, Dave.
Okay.
Anything else? I better take these other calls.
No, that's okay. Always a pleasure to talk college football with you. 3 weeks, right, Mark? And then we're going to get to see you eviscerate the TTUN fans, put them in their place, let them know who the better program is in college football.
We're going to do that, David. Absolutely.
Right. I will tune
Thank you,
in, my
sir.
friend. Take care, buddy.
Have a good one.
See ya. Yep. Bye-bye.
All right. We've got all sorts of people texting, calling, all that business. So let's take care of some personal business. There we go. All right. They should know I'm live. They should get the notifications right. Okay. I do appreciate everyone being here. We're simulcasting on the Clemson and Miami and Florida State channels as well. So maybe some of you don't see me on a regular basis, especially you Clemson folks. If you're not familiar, you of course know about Jordan and Tiger Paw Craven doing the Clemson show on Wednesday nights. You might have shown up tonight and thought, oh, this might be a special with Jordan and Tiger Paw. And then you see me and it's like, who is this guy? Well, I've been around for a little while. So actually that's where this came from here. See, a lot of people called me that. So I thought that was a good name for the network. So that's what we went with. All right. Who do we got stopping by? We got Lucas. What's going on, sir?
Mark, my friend, how are you today, my brother?
I'm good. What's up?
Dude, I'm glad you mentioned the state of Louisiana and recruiting because I've got a whole sheet of everything that I saw from state championship-wise last month that we need to discuss, especially when it comes to the ACC. So let's kind of go ahead. Let's talk about first Elijah Haven in the class 2027. Number one player in the nation. Everybody knows about him. Set the Division II. This is the different divisions that we have in the state of Louisiana. So we got rid of 5A, 4A, 3A, 2A, and 1A state championships in our divisions for some reason. Set the most passing yards with 300, added 155 on the ground. Has a huge upside. He's shown his youth as well, but he still has 2 years to grow in the Neil Weiner era. This guy has been all over the place. I mean, the guy is an unbelievable talent at quarterback. Then we got into the action that I got to see on Friday and Saturday. Dude, we got prospects all across the board. So, Mark, are you familiar around the Edna Carr area?
Familiar with
or
who?
Edna Carr High School? Edna Carr High School?
No.
So, they put out some dudes recently.
I don't even know what that is. Except
it's in New Orleans.
Louisiana. But
yeah, it's in New Orleans. But the number one player in the nation actually came from Edna Carr High School in the class of 25, Jakeem Stewart. I mean, how many defensive tackles do you see running a 4.8?
Yeah, I can't say many, of course.
But
maybe
no, that's just exactly. So you got him, JT Lindsay, who had 155 against Carr's defense, Teron Francis, who's an LSU commit. You've got not just that on Carr's offensive side of the ball. You've got Oliver Mitchell, who's a Tulane commit, DeJuan Smith, multiple options for an up-and-coming quarterback in John Johnson, who just got an ACC offer not too long ago. You got Corey Adams, who's an Ole Miss commit, Richard Anderson, who I talked to Coach Ed Orgeron whenever he was at the state championship. He says he's probably the best defensive lineman that he's ever seen. And the guy's been around the game of football since the 90s. So that is saying a lot. That's just a few prospects that you need to look out for, Mark, in the state of Louisiana. But since we're on the topic of the ACC, brother, look, I heard the last caller talking about stock. North Carolina stock you better get ready for a slow increase. They're going to have maybe one, maybe two good seasons with Belichick. Because right now, I mean, portal-wise, I don't think anybody's going to want to play for Belichick. I mean, how many guys wanted to play for him at New England? Like, understand he's a winner, but at the same time, I don't think he relates to the college game. Like, when you see college coaches, you look at Pete Carroll. The guy was a player's coach. Bill Belichick is really just here getting ready for his next head coaching debut, next NFL contract, so that he can get paid a good bit.
So Belichick is how old?
He's got to be in his 70s at this point.
I think he's like 71, 72. Does anyone know in the chat?
72.
72.
But
okay,
I just don't see.
Is he really setting himself up for it? Couldn't this be just the ride off into the sunset, like his last 5 or 6 years of coaching? Is at a nice little sleepy school in North Carolina. Not a lot's expected of him. He might win some bowl games and look okay and kind of finish off his career.
There is no telling at this point, Mark. Look, 75 to me is probably the cutoff for him going to the NFL. Anything after that, he's done. But I just don't see at this point Belichick really building a solid program at UNC. He doesn't relate to the kids. He's sending all these other scouts out there. But at the end of the day, he can't build a program with the way he approaches recruits. I mean, which coach is going to say, well, we don't know if you're just going to play. When you're a coach, you're supposed to sell to recruits why you want to come to your respective school. And unfortunately, Belichick does not have that. He just doesn't. That's why I just have very little faith in what North Carolina can do in the near future. I'm not a Belichick hater. I'm not a North Carolina hater. I'm just giving you all the facts that I've gotten and what I've seen being around the coaching carousel and being a part of that group.
So roughly 300 players from college football make it to the NFL the next year. There's about 250 or 60 drafted. Almost all of them make the roster, and then another 50 free agents, whatever the number is, 350, something like that. So 350 players from college football move on to the NFL the next year. And if you know anything about athletes' egos, especially in college at that age, I'll harken back to Richard Williams, Mississippi State head basketball coach, once told me, we're standing there on the practice floor. His team had just gone to the locker room. We're just out there shooting the bull. And he says to me, he's talking about his team after they went to the Final Four the year before, but they had 3 NBA players leave. And he goes, do you know how many kids in that locker room right now think that they're going to play in the NBA? And I said, what, coach? And he said, all of them. He said, do you know how many will play in the NBA? And I knew that. I said, none. He goes, exactly, none. So anyway, my point being, out of 350 that make the NFL, there's probably 1,000 that think they're going to play in the NFL. So this gives maybe Bill Belichick a little edge in selling, I know how to get you to the NFL. I know how to prepare your game for the next level.
And like you said with the egos too, Mark, you're talking about the new age where my generation is getting bad with NIL. It's amazing to me that, because I never would have thought this would happen about 5 years ago, that we're looking at 16, 17, 18-year-olds basically giving the world at this point. You're getting 6, 7-figure contracts. You're talking about Arch Manning, who hasn't really played much of college football, who started one game in his career, and he's got a Red Bull sponsor at 19 years old. And I guarantee you, there is extra sources that is going to get paid underneath the table that he has already gotten. Many people don't want to say the quiet part out loud, Mark, because everybody thinks, oh, just because NIL is in place, they think that there's no more under-the-table payments. That's not even true. I promise you. There's still a bag man in between. They're just using NIL as something that they can put on there and say, okay, this is what we're doing to pay you. But we also got other guys that from the booster club or from outside sources that are going to pay you for how you do in a football game.
Why? I'm not saying you're wrong, but I'm just saying why do they need to do that now? They don't need to do that.
Why not? Why not?
Why? They can pay them
Mark,
above the table.
Mark,
Why?
It's the legal way they do this with NIL. Under the table wise gives them that extra influence.
I'm still not. Maybe I'm missing something here. But
Mark,
if I needed to in the year 2015, I had to pay Lucas to play for Georgia, and I slipped him 50 grand under the table to do it. But I don't have to slip him under 50 grand under the table now. I can give him 50 grand or 500 grand or whatever the price. It's all legal.
Mark,
Why does anything have to be slid under the table?
Bound. It's still bound to happen.
Why? Again, I'm just not getting why. Why would that have to be? All right. I think we lost Lucas here. Lucas, we appreciate you being here. All right, let's keep it rolling here at the Voice of College Football. We got our buddy DeReal MVP stopping by.
Hey, Mark, how are you doing this evening?
I am doing just fine. How are you?
I'm doing good. We've covered a lot of topics, but I would actually like to cover what the live stream was proposed about. How about we do that?
Yes.
So, you know how some days are better for some programs, even in the offseason, and some days are worse, like when the Michigan scandal broke. That was a complete disaster for them. Well, Mark, today is a disastrous day for Clemson and Florida State because they just have, complete egg all over their face. Can I read some of the ESPN article for you?
Sure.
It says, under the proposed plan, a percentage of the ACC's television revenue would be included in a, quote, brand fund. And that money would then be distributed to schools that are annually generate the most revenue for the conference in football and men's and women's basketball, with Clemson, Florida State, Miami, and North Carolina likely at the top of the pyramid, sources told ESPN. Should that agreement be finalized, something sources said is not imminent, but was closely tied to the ESPN option, Clemson and Florida State would be expected to drop their lawsuits.
Oh, yeah.
I thought Florida State and Clemson were going to leave the ACC yesterday, Mark. What happened?
And it proceeds to tell us in the article that while not giving us exact quotes, I'm sure that there will be more coming forward because there's going to have to be once these two schools stay in the ACC, especially Florida State. They were much more vocal out front, much more harsh in their rhetoric about the ACC. I saw a few comments, again, direct quotes in there about very much backpedaling that, no, we never said that we were leaving the ACC. We were just exploring our options, and we were just seeing what else was out there. And we were also just wanting the ACC to, consider our weight to the conference and that they would need to change a few things. And you take them to court over that? No. We're not buying that. We know.
Well, they also filed in a legal brief that they wanted to leave the ACC. It was in one of the legal briefs. There was an article in like November or December. It said the Florida State has said we are not leaving the ACC, and they attached like the legal brief where it says Florida State plans on filing official notice to leave the ACC. I mean, it's also stupid, Mark. Obviously, Mark. To me, this was never going to work. Did you think at any point in moment in time this was actually going to work for Florida State or in Clemson?
Well, I thought that, okay, there are smart people at these universities. Now, the legal people involved, the attorneys that they hire, are paid to be smart in doing their jobs, not necessarily give legal advice to say, do this or don't do this. They say, go ahead and do it because we obviously want the work and we will charge you just, out your rear end for the next year and we will make zillions of dollars. So you're not going to get wise direction from the lawyers themselves. So they just want to work and make money. So they made a calculated decision to say, we need to fight the ACC to get out of the conference, to force our way out of the conference, or force them into such a sweet deal that it's going to be worth it, which that's the latter portion of that I cannot imagine in any way. And we have not been given specifics on this slush fund or this brand fund and all this other business and getting a lucrative share of the teams that participate in postseason play, getting a higher share of the revenue. I can't imagine that's going to make up for. It's going to take a while before that makes up for all the resources that have been put into a year and a half. And prior to that, of all the discovery and everything that was put into hiring consulting firms and everything else to put into this fight. So that was a miscalculation.
So you call it a calculated decision. I believe it was a pure emotional decision.
By a university. I'm not saying you're wrong, Darrell, but I'm saying that's a damning horrible thing to say. And I'm not saying because it's coming out of your mouth. I'm saying in looking at Clemson or Florida State that they made emotional decisions. Wow.
Yeah, I believe so. And I believe your rival fan base, the team up north, that as you call them, the Michigan Wolverines, is making emotional decisions. I mean, we put I'm just talking about the collective society. We put a hierarchical structure on these universities, but at the end of the day, Mark, these are all human beings with emotions and biases just like each one of us, and they are prideful people at these universities, and they, in my opinion, feel slighted that they perceived by Florida State being left out of the playoffs. They themselves are being attacked by the University of Michigan being attacked by the the NCAA. They themselves are being attacked. That's what I believe is going on.
Well, besides other points, the one that you make that maybe people don't think about, and this is just more of a commentary on human nature, is that despite having intellect and degrees and education and for all these other reasons, having the wherewithal to make sound decisions, sound judgment, there's a few things in human nature that get in the way of making sound decisions, even if you have the intellect to do it. And one would be lust, but you're hitting on power, you're hitting on ego, basically, is what you're pride and ego. Yes.
Pride and Mark is the deadliest of sins for a reason.
Yes.
And I agree with Fuzzy Ball's comment here. I don't believe that Clemson fans were all excited about leaving the ACC. I didn't hear any chatter within the fan base themselves or even really the university. They were just kind of doing it lockstep with Florida State, kind of, from my perception, half in, half out this whole time. They're like, yeah, we'll go along to get along just to see if this works, But Florida State was all in. They pushed all their chips in the middle of the table and then some. So that's just my perception of this whole thing.
So to respond to the super chat, and we so much appreciate that coming in from Fuzzy Balls. I don't know because I don't talk to enough Clemson fans. We usually record with our buddy Jason Priester from the Clemson Insider, but we've got our Clemson guys over there, Jordan and Tiger Paw, dealing with that show. So I host Florida State and Miami shows, and I will say that doing those week after week after week after week, and obviously this being at the front, especially in Florida State, being the headline topic for months and months and months, Florida State, those people, I I never heard from any Florida State fans that said, man, can't we figure out a way to stay in the ACC? Man, this would just be, I don't think we're going to be taken by anyone. I don't think the Big Ten wants us or the SEC wants us. And we're probably going to be relegated to the Big 12 if we do have a home. And let's make this work. I really love our history in the ACC or anything like that. I didn't hear that from any Florida State fans. The thousands that we heard from over months and months were basically, we kind of have our say as to whether we want to go to the SEC. It was more like the Big Ten is coming after us. The SEC is going to come after us. We'll have our say on where we're going to go. We'll have this kind of power to be able to determine, should we go SEC? Should we go Big Ten?
Sounds a lot like pride, Mark, you're describing there.
Yes.
Which I mean, I don't know about the last part of the statement. The Super League will happen by 2031. I mean, that's only 6 years away. This media rights deal extension is to 2036. I don't see the case for the Big 12 falling off or the ACC falling off now until later on in the future. That's just me, in my opinion. Mark, do you think Florida State going 2-10 over the last season took a lot of a perceptual hit for this lawsuit for Florida State? Because it's kind of hard to argue you're the big dog on top when you're literally the worst team in your conference and maybe the worst team in all of Power 4 football.
I do. Normally, my take on where college football teams and programs are headed is more treetop. Okay, let's not just grind down to these 12 games. There's more to it than that. But when you go 2-10, that's not like, think of the worst seasons at other brand name schools. You know, when's the last time Ohio State's lost 3 games in a regular season? It's been 20 years. So, like, that's a dip. That's a dip. And I'm not putting Florida State on Ohio State's class. They're not. But they're in Oregon's class, I guess, not currently, but, you know, over the last 15 or 20 years. And so 8-4, 9-3 would be a downturn from what they did the year before, but it would be understandable. And okay, that's not a big, but when you go 2-10, that's when you only beat one FBS team, that show and only had one peak year. You know, they had a downturn from 2017 for the next 5 years after that. They've largely been a bad football program for 8 years now. So that's more than just one down season. It's a trend that was fixed over a 2-year period and specifically a 1-year period by the transfer portal, by good decisions in the transfer portal and hitting the jackpot 1 year. Otherwise, bad football program for 8 years. Well, that's more than a trend. That's pretty much what you are now.
Yeah. Can we just say they kind of got lucky with some of their hits in the portal that year? I mean, I don't think anybody was expecting Keon Coleman to be as good as he turned out to be. Like, I mean,
I wasn't, but he did catch 60 passes at Michigan State. He wasn't some bum.
Yeah, I understand that, but he wasn't like clearly one of the best wide receivers.
I get your point. It was probably a combination of like 75% good scouting and 25% guys kicked in and they hit it. Braden Fisk, who is now tearing it up in the NFL, by the way. I think he led the NFL in rookie sacks for the Rams. He was a like Central Michigan, like all MAC player. You don't know that guy's going to turn into a first-round draft pick. I don't care how much you scout him.
Right. And Fuzzy Balls is not just the SEC, but the Big Ten didn't want him. And Mark, I mean, relationships are one of the most important and valuable things in society as a whole. And when you have a partner that is just openly willing to stab you in the back, I mean, you talk about it in just your own personal experience, Mark. What if you had somebody from a rival company join you, is known to openly be hostile to other coworkers as he was leaving the door and felt superior to them? I mean, how would that make you feel on a personal level?
Well, there was an article that was released. This was probably before the season, so sometime in the summer. And it was one of the main college football insider, whether that was Pete Thamel, Ross Dellinger, one of those guys I would love to give credit, but it was one of those main guys. And we combed through it here and on the Florida State channel. And it very much, it could not cite specific sources because, of course, an Illinois athletic director or chancellor doesn't want to be on record of just trashing Florida State. But it was substantiated that they had spoken to coaches, athletic directors, and administrators in the Big Ten and the SEC. And there were some unkind things to say about how Florida State conducts business. So they didn't exactly sound like they were opening their arms up to Florida State. And that's what really, woke me up to, okay, this isn't going as well as you would think. Just, oh, it's Florida State. They make a lot of money. They win football games. They got a championship history. The Big Ten or the SEC would love to have them, and they really don't hurt them financially. They don't really bolster them financially, for as much as Florida State fans would like to think that everybody just watches their games. They would not, really move the needle in the Big Ten or the SEC. They would fortify it. They would confirm it. But that was the first article that I thought, okay, well, Thamel, Dellinger, that kind of guy does not fabricate quotes. This is obviously legit. And if this many from a broad stroke of various roles within a conference are saying this, well, this doesn't sound like these guys are going to be voting to accept Florida State.
Absolutely, Mark. And I'm trying to compare this to the Michigan thing as well, because I believe there's a lot of similarities between this and the Michigan thing. I think Michigan, because, they came out with admitting to cheating. I believe it was the first time they admitted openly to recruiting violations and stuff like that in the Yahoo report just you did a few days ago. I don't think the way they've conducted themselves in business is going to help, or in the public sphere is going to help them. I think it's going to hurt them. Just the same arguments as Florida State. You were acting, and Michigan has a more substantial case, in my opinion, because they're a bigger brand and all that stuff, but they are acting superior than everyone else. They are acting like the smartest person in the room. They're acting high-minded, elitist attitude that is above everybody and knows things that everybody else doesn't. And I think it's going to backfire, Mark. Like, do you remember the last time in a major sport that a national championship was vacated?
Louisville lost its NCAA men's basketball title, right? In
2013. And
Okay.
do you know how much stuff they did that was on the court? If you put it in percent form, do you know how much it was?
No.
It was zero. Literally 0%. Okay? Everything was about recruiting violations and scandals that involved people in the escort world, I'll put it politely.
That I remember, yes. Yep.
Yes. So if we're using that standard to revoke a national championship, okay, then Michigan, that cheated on the field in the year that won the national championship, shouldn't they also have it removed?
Okay, well, you get into something. Okay, on one hand, hiring strippers, hookers, doing whatever you're doing there does not affect on-field play and the legitimacy, the honor of the game. Okay,
Correct.
but it obviously is a ploy. It is a tactic to lure in the athletes that then do perform on the field. So it's a recruiting violation.
Right. It is
extremely
immoral.
serious.
It is an immoral action as well. There's more ethical
Sure,
way.
absolutely. Yeah, I'm just talking about from the standpoint of cheating to win. Yes.
But I know, Mark, you are a visionary in the national championship landscape, because you just wrote a whole book about it, for goodness sake. So I would classify you as a visionary. And I would like to petition to you that the 2023 national championship you should recognize as vacated until this investigation is over. Nobody wins it. That is my proposal.
Well, what DeReal is referring to here is during previous off seasons, and I'm going to be diligent about completing the task this year, is we will march through. So we, for those of you, and I think I'm speaking to a slightly different audience, slightly, with the Clemson, Miami, and Florida State folks joining in here, just slightly, that we just don't, we're not a groupthink organization here where just whoever tells us this is what was determined is it. No, we respect authority, but we question decisions, we question results, meaning the polls, the rankings, the configuration of playoff systems over the course of college football history has been, unstable and not necessarily consistent. Be kind. So we march through the years to determine who rightfully can claim a national championship, and DeReal is putting in his bid for a vacated national championship under the Voice of College Football rulings for the 2023 Michigan Wolverines. Duly noted.
Yes, and I'm doing this because both sides now agree that there was cheating in the 2023 season. I mean, The only reason to cheat is to win games. And I believe from a moral level, every game you cheat should automatically be forfeited because that's the only reason to play the game.
I can't argue with that point, and you've stated it. I'm not saying you got it from me, but I have made that exact point numerous occasions, and it seems rather obvious on the surface, but if you really grind down, I think that some people kind of flippantly just kind of discard it to, okay, it helped them a little bit, but they still would have beat. Why would they need to do this against, Michigan State? They beat them by 5 touchdowns, and this team they beat by 4 touchdowns. They could win those games. They were just do it because you can do it. No, there was only one reason to cheat. Yes.
Right.
What DeReal is saying right there, there is no other reason to cheat. If you have full confidence, 100% confidence that you can win, or for honest people, even if you have 3% confidence that you can win, you still go out there and do it fair and square. That's the only reason to cheat. If I move somebody's chess piece when they look the other way, or knock a checker off the board, or whatever I do, or, change the score of a pickup basketball game by a couple points because I know that the other guy's really not keeping score correctly, not paying attention, then I wouldn't do that if I did not fear losing.
Correct. And it's not like before when the alleged cheating took place, Michigan was easily beating Michigan State, Wisconsin, these level programs.
True.
And before and after now, they have struggled against these programs.
The season prior to the and it's not alleged cheating, folks. It's confirmed cheating. Now, to what severity and all those things and who knew, that is still being reported, investigated, and so forth. But it's confirmed cheating. I still hear it referred to as alleged cheating. It's not alleged cheating. It's been proven that they cheated. But yes, to your point, they lost to those two teams, actually, ironically, the season before the cheating started. Michigan did.
Correct. And I think the only reason Michigan is doing the way they're doing is because they believe the NCAA is at a weakened state, and they believe they can rise above the NCAA. But if this was the 2013 NCAA that took a title away from Louisville for, in my opinion, far less on-the-field stuff, I think it's almost inarguable Michigan's title would be taken away if the NCAA had their power level that they did in 2013.
Think about this one, DeReal. In 2010, Ohio State went 12-1. They won the Sugar Bowl. They won the Big Ten championship. Okay, that offseason, this tattoo scandal ensued in which players took awards that they won, that they fair and square won on the field, and they traded them for tattoos. Now, I'm not condoning that simply because it's a rule. A lot of people would say it's ridiculous. They can do whatever they want with their awards. But I would like to at least honor and if an athlete receives an award, that at least through the time of their eligibility in college, that they should keep the award and honor that. But so they did break rules. But when you think about the punishment of those rules, the punishment should have gone forward, meaning those games were not won by players who were ineligible because of acts before the games were played. So in all of their NCAA issues, there were violations that allowed the players to stay eligible, or recruiting violations that brought them to campus, whatever the case might be, that got the players in position to win the games and the championships on the field. And so the taking and vacating of the wins and the championships, that all makes sense. This is a situation where the games were won and the championships won, then the players committed the violations. So their eligibility had nothing to do with their cheating. That was after the fact. So I think that's a completely bogus punishment. And so that's one that really hits me.
Correct. And I believe if we're being fair and equitable, because your whole thing is about equity, Mark, the same outcomes for everybody. And if we can't recognize what Ohio State did in 2010, then I don't think it would be equitable to recognize the 2023 season for Michigan. I think it should just be completely vacated, because we don't know what they would have done without the cheating. We can make projections, we can assume, and some projections are better than others based on their talent level and stuff, but we don't even know the level of recruiting violations to get those players and stuff. So I think we should just wipe it clean. And I think you have enough evidence. And Mark, let's do it from an engagement perspective. How many comments do you think you would get if you just put like a list of national championships and you just put a little asterisk next to Michigan? I mean, think about it from that way as well. You know how many fans would just post on the Michigan channel why Michigan should be removed of the 2023 national championship?
Well, you've probably been able to tell, Darrell, I kind of let our Michigan guys go run with that channel, even though, of course, the ownership of the channel is mine. I can do whatever I want. Yeah, I can blast away and start posting videos over there. That would be something, and disturb the camaraderie over there.
I know you got to make sure the pond is a little active every now and then. And, they're out there running wild and stuff, talking about Bryce Underwood being the first 100-star player in Michigan history. But yeah, 2 years ago, stars didn't matter and all this, ratings didn't matter until it helps us. So I think it'd be nice you just go over there and just stir the pot a little bit with facts and opinion, logic, just to keep the integrity of what we're trying to do in check. And I think during the debate, it should be brought up that this 23 season is tainted because of actions chosen by individuals that had only to do with Michigan. Ohio State, even though in the Netflix documentary, they said Ohio State may have had a reason. You remember that? Ohio State may have caused it because like Ryan State's brother was connected to the FBI or the police department or something like that. No, it's Michigan cheating, Mark. And they should be removed in the national championship. It's not going to happen. I wish it were, but I think you should recognize it be taken away.
But I will be very upfront in saying, when we do get to that point, I will wrestle with that decision. And I want to make the correct, or at least I don't know that there's a exact correct decision right this second, but at least a logical decision based on the reasons a decision should be made, not based on factors of trying to stir up an audience or shock someone or protect myself or whatever. But I am in a bit of a sticky situation based on the team that I root for. This isn't Mr. Purdue fan or Mr. Stanford fan. That's just.
I understand that, Mark, but I think there is enough evidence to where you could justifiably, and I believe it's the correct claim to say, well, there's too much here. It's clear they cheated. They even admitted to it. The whole thing has to go. No, nobody's awarded. I understand people are going to say you're an Ohio State fan, but I believe that actually helps your argument. You're going to give your rival the most benefit of the doubt because you don't want to be seen as biased against them. So I think if it was Michigan State or Kent State or Miami of Ohio that won it, you would remove it immediately. I think you know I'm right too.
Yeah, we will get to that exercise. I will say that. I'm certainly putting myself out there in a couple Mondays from now. So again, we've got a lot of ACC folks in here. We do appreciate you being here. We know we have wandered off, but we will get to this ACC article and take your calls. The line is in the chat. And DeReal, by the way, thank you so much for correcting the line. But when you look at the banner there, what this is, and even if you're an ACC fan or you root for whomever, this will be a fun time right here because I'm not pulling any punches. So it's Ohio State, Michigan, all everything debate coming up in a couple Mondays on the main channel. We'll simulcast on the Michigan channel and the Ohio State channels. So you see that Monday, February 17th at 6 p.m. Eastern time. And Ohio State fans, I apologize, but you will not be allowed to call the show. Just clear the deck. I take on everyone. I'm sorry. I don't need your help. I don't need bullet point. I've got all the information locked and loaded. We're ready to roll. I will take on all Michigan fans on a debate about these two programs from the beginning of time up until today.
Right. The final thing I'll mention before going back to this is I believe Kentucky, Mark, my team that I root for.
Yes.
We had wins vacated for the 2021 season because
Yep.
of cheating for something that had nothing to do with on the field incidents. So I think you should take that to account as well. And I want to get back to this article. The brand fund is an addition to the performance fund. So it's not going to be one combined pot. It's going to be two separate pots. So the brand fund's going to be standard. And then you've got the performance fund. So if you had to take, who do you think, Mark, based on this season, it doesn't list it in the article, who do you think would have made the most money this year?
And just to get to something that DeReal's pointing out here, there are two pots that are going to be, compiled by the ACC to reward outstanding accomplished, or the earners of the conference, the ones that earned it. So this is on the field, but it's also from a brand standpoint, meaning that I'm guessing they're going to be looking at TV ratings first and foremost. So over the last decade, that means Florida State's number 1, Clemson's 2. I believe Louisville edges out Miami, the last numbers I saw over the last decade. And we can pretty much see that will continue on the basketball floor. Of course, that's North Carolina, Duke, etc. Okay, so Florida State could theoretically go 2-10 again next year, but if for some reason everybody just watched their games, they would get the number 1 position in the brand allocation of money. But then the other pot is based on reaching postseason play, advancing in postseason play, whether that's the men's or women's tournament or the college football playoff or bowl games. And so an inordinate amount, unlike Ohio State coming back to the Big Ten after this past Monday and winning the national championship and having to equally distribute all the money to the likes of Northwestern and Rutgers and Indiana, etc. It's going to be weighted toward the teams that are accomplishing both on the court and the field, but also are drawing the biggest viewership, which is going to be a tricky endeavor because ABC, ESPN, as they select games, will be selecting Florida State and Miami and Clemson, etc., for the best time slots. So I don't know how they're going to compare that to, relegating Wake Forest to the ACC network at noon. Of course, they're not going to have as many people watching them, and it's because they're Wake Forest, but it's also because they're relegated to the ACC network at noon. If they were moving the Wake Forest Boston College game to ABC primetime, believe it or not, a lot more people would just watch it, even though if the game sucks and those teams are no good, they just watch the ABC game on Saturday night. So I don't know how they're going to deal with that. But that's what those two things are. Now I have forgotten what your question is, DeReal.
I was saying, which one from last season do you think would have made the most money out of the pots?
Just in terms of football.
Correct. I don't expect women's basketball or men's basketball to be a significant factor in this equation.
Gotcha. Well, Clemson would have, I would think.
Oh, that's obvious. It's just weird.
But they played a playoff game. They won the ACC. I'm sure if we looked at their schedule, they played, they obviously played Georgia and South Carolina in, highly rated games. So there you go.
Correct. And something that I don't like that was in this article was it was saying that they're going to try to make Notre Dame play the top teams in the ACC.
Yes.
What's your thoughts?
Well, we'll see if Notre Dame agrees to that. Then Notre Dame is going to obviously ask for a higher share. So the ACC has leveraged Notre Dame, and this has been an agreement that benefits both, where the ACC gets a landing spot for its other 14 sports that they believe to be better than the Big East. But then they continue on their independent status in football, but they have to play 5 ACC games, and most of them are horrendous games. It's Notre Dame going to Virginia, and then they're playing Duke, and then they play, Boston College, which they played them anyway, to a large extent. So I would think Notre Dame would say, well, obviously we're a calling card. Obviously we are contributing to the ACC's improved contract because you want your better teams to play us. And that makes our path to the playoff more difficult, potentially another loss in a particular season. So that's an interesting negotiating situation there.
Right. I also believe, Mark, this could be a signal to losses mattering more than wins. Wins mattering more than losses. I said it backwards next season because let's say you're Clemson, you win every ACC game, okay? And you lose the ACC championship game to an undefeated, a one-loss ACC, and you play Georgia, South Carolina, and Notre Dame. They could have 4 losses inside the top 12. That's not an unrealistic possibility.
No.
So I believe they're going to evaluate how difficult their strength of schedule is going to be and put them in, because if you're the ACC, there's no rational or logical reason to do this, because the committee has shown us the only thing that matters, or the main thing that matters, is your record. It doesn't matter that you're Alabama and you go out there and you beat the number 2 team in the country. You lost 3 games, so you're out. So why would Clemson, Miami, Louisville take on this additional loss?
Well, they're going to get a higher TV rating and therefore possibly more money.
Correct, but that'll be
money at the gate.
That would, if you have an additional loss, the odds of you having 2 teams in the playoff is substantially lessened, because you're already perceived as being in a weaker conference. And that playoff game is going to far outweigh whatever game you can have versus Notre Dame, because it's a playoff game.
Yes. So the strategy there is going to change depending on whether we stay with the current structure or there is this implementation of what I believe the SEC and the Big Ten would want, with a set number of positions for each conference, in which the ACC would only have 1, or they would share the possibility of getting a second with the Big 12.
Right. I hate that model, by the way. I think everybody should have to earn it on the football field. The Big Ten this year earned those spots. The ACC earned a spot. And I just don't think it's fair. The SEC could theoretically have a year like the ACC. I doubt it's going to happen, but it's possible. And yet they would have 4 teams in. It doesn't make sense.
Sure.
These games need to be played on the football field, and it completely avoids scheduling any meaningful non-conference games, because they're going to have no weight at all. But Mark, I've been on here for way too long. Love talking to you as usual. I'll see you next time.
Thanks to Real. We appreciate it, man. Our guide to Real MVP. The link is in the chat. I'm going to read through this article. We appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. And again, Disputed National Champions. The link is in the description section. as I stated off the top, I'm going to start posting reviews because I so much appreciate the kind reviews and the complimentary reviews that have come in on Amazon and here in the chat. And I would ask anybody that's purchased and read the book, and you make some nice comments to us here in the chat, but just take those comments and just put them on Amazon, because that helps drive the distribution into traffic and drive the sales of the book, Disputed National Champions. It's $9.99. And if you're a junkie, if you're a nerd like we all are of college football, I'm telling you, you will like it. You will love this book. It's not just a history book. We are propelling the results of the 1990s. We're breaking them down, for one thing. We're breaking down all the results of the 1990s season by season, but we're projecting them toward the other iterations of postseason, the BCS. What would have happened in 1990 if there was a BCS, if there was a 4-team playoff, if there was a 12-team playoff, and also the proposed 14-team playoff? We run every season through all of those models. It's a whole lot of fun. I find it interesting that in let's see, that in 1993, that if we had a 12-team playoff in 1993, your 12 seed is, we could probably sit here for the next 45 minutes and you wouldn't guess who the 12 seed would have been in the playoffs in 1993. Does anyone have any idea of a guess? I'm obviously letting you know it's a remote team. It's just, yeah, the 12-team playoff in 1993, number 12 would have been Fresno State, Wisconsin 11, Notre Dame 10. Why Notre Dame 10? So that's probably catching some people right there. Notre Dame 10. How would Notre Dame have been 10th in the playoff in 1993 when you could argue that they should have been playing for the national championship? Well, all the conferences would have gotten automatic bids. There were 7 conferences in 1993. There were 7 power conferences: the ACC, the Big 8, the Big East, the SEC, the Southwest Conference, the Big 10, and the Pac-10. And Auburn and Tennessee were ranked at that point ahead of Notre Dame before the final poll at the end of the regular season. So anyway, it's interesting. It is interesting. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. Let's check out this article, and we will probably speed read unless somebody would like to give me a call. We're going to run through this, and many of these points have already been made, so I'm not going to belabor it, but if I've got something to add, I certainly will. That's why we're here. This is what we do, folks. If you've not caught us on a regular basis, when there is breaking news, we do our best to get on here as soon as possible and break it down for you. ESPN has agreed to pick up its option to continue broadcasting ACC sports through 2036, the network and conference announced Thursday. The agreement is a critical step towards securing stability for the conference. With the television deal settled, the ACC is now working toward a settlement with Clemson and Florida State that could end those schools' ongoing lawsuits against the conference. So, wow. Point here is that maybe it could be argued on Clemson and Florida State's behalf that them pushing this to the extent of a lawsuit, and then the ACC countered. So you're getting 2 legal teams involved on 2 fronts for both Clemson, Florida State, and the ACC. In Florida State's case, for over a year, that all that money invested is going to be made up by them making more money. Okay. And that mattered, that the ACC and ESPN could not have come to this deal without Clemson and Florida State pushing them to the hilt in court. Okay. ESPN had until February 1st to pick up the option on a 20-year contract signed in 2016 that helped launch the ACC network. Had ESPN declined, the partnership would have ended after the 27 season. All right, we're pleased to extend our media rights agreement with the ACC through 36. Jimmy Pitaro said in a statement. I've got some interesting history with Jimmy Pitaro, by the way. Anyway, we remain committed to serving the ACC, its member schools, student athletes, and fans via comprehensive live game coverage, storytelling, and broad exposure across our unprecedented array of networks. That's all just, it's a PR statement. After ESPN agreed to pick up the option, a decision the ACC Board of Directors voted to approve Wednesday. Sources said the conference is working on additional value adds. Here we go. Which could include creating more marquee matchups in football and men's basketball to maximize content on the networks that would help pave the way toward the new revenue distribution model and a settlement with Clemson and FSU. In a perfect world, when sports were fair and should be approached as being fair, what do you do with scheduling? You schedule equitably, meaning you create schedules that are as fair as possible. But because money is added here, the better teams, or what are supposed to be the better teams, better and most popular, don't always add up. They don't always correlate. They usually do. But the better teams, the tougher programs, the more popular programs are going to be weighted down by tougher schedules. A lot of you probably don't have an issue with that, and I get it. I don't think it's right. Multiple athletic directors told ESPN this could also involve using the ACC's relationship with Notre Dame to strategically create more games against the conference's top-tier teams, or who they think are the top-tier teams. That would have been Florida State this past season. They were the worst team in the conference. So earlier this month, Notre Dame AD Pete Bavacqua said he was open to playing more games against Clemson in the future. I don't know why, in particular, Clemson. Maybe Clemson's the only sure thing in the ACC in regards to playing on an upper tier year after year after year after year. And we know Clemson has certainly taken a bit of a tumble, but they're the only ones that have consistently played at a high level. Negotiations surrounding the option ran in conjunction with discussions between the ACC, Clemson, Florida State on a new revenue distribution model aimed at alleviating the school's biggest concerns over financial disparities with peers in the Big Ten and SEC, both of which have more generous TV contracts signed over the past 2 years. Under the proposed plan, a percentage of the ACC's television revenue would be included in a brand fund, meaning if you get better TV ratings, you get more money. The money would then be distributed to schools that annually generate the most revenue for the conference in football and men's and women's basketball. Should that agreement be finalized, something sources said is not imminent, but was closely tied to the ESPN option, Clemson and Florida State would be expected to drop their lawsuits. We appreciate the ongoing partnership with ESPN, blah, 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 by Jim Phillips, ACC commissioner. Don't really care about that. Clemson had been cautious in its legal filings to note that its lawsuit was not a move to leave the ACC, but rather to determine the cost of doing so. Their legal filings were not a move to leave the ACC, but rather to determine the costs of doing so. Well, if you're determining the costs of doing so, then you would only go through that practice in order to leave the conference. Though Florida State has been more vocal in its desire to test the waters, AD Mike Alford has maintained that the Seminoles never declared their intention to leave the ACC. I don't believe that. Okay. Whether either school would have had a landing spot in the aftermath of a departure remained a point of conjecture, but securing their media rights, which each member school signed over to the league in 2016, would have been a critical part of moving to any other conference. ACC sources suggested a vote to support the new revenue distribution plan may not be unanimous, but one conference administrator said a cut in distribution would likely be worthwhile if it meant stability in the coming years as college athletics works its way through a volatile series of existential shifts in its amateurism model. Multiple administrators who spoke with ESPN noted the severe impact that the collapse of the Pac-12 had on Oregon State and Washington State. Absolutely. If Florida State and Clemson didn't necessarily have a landing spot in the ACC or in the SEC or the Big Ten, I'm sure the Big 12. Shoot, with the approach that our buddy, why can't I think of the ACC commissioner's name? Oh my word, I'm drawing a blank. Wow, that's crazy. Anyway, I'm guessing Clemson and Florida State, and it was reported Miami would have found a safe haven in the Big 12 and others, and maybe North Carolina, Virginia actually did the Big 10, and for other reasons that they would have been attractive. But the point I'm getting to is, if the ACC would have collapsed, then you've got schools like, you've got a situation where take Wake Forest, their financial gain from this media rights contract is being compromised severely. Well, we think severely. Based on the way this story's written, we don't have the financials in front of us, but it seems like it's going to be substantial. Otherwise, if it's just a pittance, then Clemson and Florida State aren't going to be too happy about that. So expect it to be pretty substantial, but that's a better fate than having the ACC collapse because the 8 best schools took off. Or not necessarily that the ACC would have collapsed, but it would have become a group of 5 situation. The new brand distribution fund would be in addition to the ACC's success initiatives. Okay, again, this is all about the pool of money funded via revenue from the expanded college football playoff. So teams are going to be rewarded for making the college football playoff. I'm guessing bowl games as well. That money currently is shared throughout the league. And then men's and women's basketball tournament participants, and they will not share, or it's not like they're not going to share some of it, but the distribution, the share going to the teams that did not make postseason play is going to be minuscule compared to what it's been. Think SMU joined the ACC just to stay relevant in football for 9 years with no cut. So then after these 9 years, that takes us to like 2034, somewhere in the last 3 to 4 years of this contract, they will be cutting in SMU to some degree. I don't know if that's going to be 100% full share or what it's going to be, but they get 0 for 9 years. I guess 1 year down already. So 8 more. Cal and Stanford only get 30%. The ACC success initiatives, which went into place this year, provide additional revenue to schools that play in the postseason. Oh, it went into effect this year. Ironic that Florida State fights for this. It goes into effect this year. They don't make a bowl game. The brand initiatives would also be accessible to any ACC school, though the biggest names would have a clear leg up. Okay, specific metrics have not been finalized. I want to see those metrics because I just noted to the real MVP when he called why the TV ratings factor is tricky to figure out because there's an unfair advantage to the teams that get scarfed up, Clemson, Florida State, Miami, on the bigger networks in the primetime positions or the better TV windows. You can't say, so when Wake Forest plays Boston College at noon on the ACC network and 300,000 people watch it, and then Miami and Florida State play at 8 p.m. Eastern on ABC that night and 3.3 million people watch it, you can't just flat out say, well, 11 times more people watched that game. Therefore, they should get, because if you would flop, believe it or not, Florida State, Miami to the ACC network at noon, and you would take Wake Boston College and move it to ABC primetime, no, they're not going to get the same. You're not just going to flip numbers. Obviously, the Florida State Miami game is so much more popular, but there's going to be a strong impact. As far back as February of 23, Florida State's Mike Alford started pushing for the ACC television money to be distributed to the teams that bring in the most via brand value and television ratings. Alford said then, based on a market valuation that he had commissioned, that Florida State contributed roughly 15% of the value in the ACC media rights deal, but received only 7% of the distributions. At that time, the conference had 14 full members. So if those numbers hold, let's say the ACC media rights are, the math is too much for us to go through right this second. Well, let's do it. Let's use very rough numbers just to prove a point. If the ACC was going to pay $100 million to every school for football every season, they're nowhere close to that. But for round numbers' sake, $100 million to each school, this is about what it's going to look like. Instead of $100 million going to every school, I would say probably 50% of that's going to be guaranteed. So it's going to be 50 million now to each school. Then they're going to take the other 50 million times 17, the number of teams in the conference, and say, what are the valuations of their TV ratings and their brands? And for Florida State, a little bit more than twice the value of an equal distribution. So they wouldn't get the other 50 million. They would get, you'd have to do a bunch of math to figure, it might be 62 million or something like that. Okay, the ACC has been in litigation with Florida State Clemson for more than a year. I found it crazy that Florida State, if they would have had to buy their way out, or Clemson bought their way out, look at that figure, 700 million. Now that would have been counted down. They would have negotiated that down, but still, if it was 400 million and probably getting a compromised share in the Big Ten, shoot, the Big Ten's not even paying Oregon a full share or Washington a full share. They're still not even paying Rutgers a full share 10 years later. So Florida State would not have walked into the Big Ten to get a full share. Can you imagine if they would have had to been relegated to the Big 12 and their payout would have been roughly the same? Plus, they spent all this money to pay attorneys and, oh man, the resources that they've exhausted. And then on top of that, to get out of the ACC to make the same amount of money in the Big 12. But that is not going to happen, it appears. Clemson, Florida State have argued that the ACC television contract, which earns the conference about half of what the Big Ten receives from Fox, puts the schools at a significant financial disadvantage compared with rivals in the SEC and the Big Ten, making it impossible to consistently compete for national championships. As part of the settlement, Clemson and Florida State are asking the ACC to agree to reduce penalties for exiting the grant of rights after 2031, when TV contracts for the Big Ten, SEC, and the Big 12 are set to expire. Let's understand something that tends to get misconstrued, I believe, and then we will take a quick call from our buddy George. Is something that gets misconstrued here is, I'm throwing out rough numbers again. The ACC schools get $40 million from their ESPN contract, and the SEC and the Big Ten schools get $80 million. That was a bad deal by the ACC because they should get $80 million. No, even if they cut the best deal in the world, their schools, their football products are not worth the same amount of money per school that the SEC and the Big Ten are. So that has to be understood, because I just think that there's this obvious, when a lot of fan bases within, let's say the Big 12, or in this case, the ACC, look at these TV numbers, they think, wow, we're getting screwed. Big 10 schools and SEC schools get twice as much money. Well, they get, I don't know, twice the TV ratings. Probably not quite that, but most of that is justified. It's not that horrible of a deal. All right. So that's it. We got our buddy George stopping by. George, what's going on?
Oh, Mark,
Hello.
I have a question.
Okay.
Will the ACC survive?
Well, they just got a TV contract, media rights extension. Yeah.
Just so they're right up there with the big boys now.
I don't completely agree.
I agree. You're right.
This article is it's very vague. It doesn't have any financial terms to this, but it says that that's bringing them close to the SEC and the Big Ten. I can't imagine. And if it does, then ESPN's overpaying them, because ACC games don't do
That's a
what
good
SEC
point.
and Big Ten games do. So they shouldn't be making this much money.
You know, I notice every time I read an article about something in the real world, it will always say the figures used are from the year 2022. It's the last year the numbers are compiled for, or 2023, maybe sometime.
Yeah.
They're always 2-3 years behind, right?
Yep.
But not with college football or basketball. Boy, we know exactly to the person how many people were watching, but we don't have no crime statistics, no anything else statistics in the whole world. We're all lagging behind. Money, stock market, everything. They're calculating it, though. How's that even possible? Never mind. Different subject. When I was young, we used to lay and look at the sun, the moon, and the stars, and life moves so slow. Now, life goes like that, you know, so fast.
I know. If something happened 12 hours ago, it's ancient history.
That guy made a song about that. Kenny Chesney. It's called The Good Stuff, I think, isn't it?
Chesney. All right.
That'd be a good lead in. So nothing's going to work out with Rob Brown and those guys?
Rob Brown?
Yeah, those guys I was telling you about that just started a channel, but they got all the good old boys from the SEC on there.
Okay.
You never got a hold of them? You can't talk to them?
I didn't know where to find them exactly.
It doesn't matter, because I have their formula. Go find your local Chevy dealership. They got Ford, and a country western store, and a hunting store, and a MRI imaging place, and there you go. It's a done deal. I don't know. How do you do that?
I wonder if that would be a waste of my time, just to kind of drive down the street and start knocking on doors and saying, hey, we got a Florida State channel, we got Miami.
Anything. We could do sports bars.
Yeah, sports bars.
I'll call.
Absolutely.
I could do that. I can make a to-do list. Call every sports bar in Tallahassee and Miami. We'll have to talk about the money off the air. I don't know how to charge for this shit. My kid just laughed. He thought that was funny.
How's that
right.
boy of yours doing?
He's
doing
good.
all right. Okay.
Yeah. He's the second from the youngest. How are you? How old are
From
you?
the youngest and like the third from the youngest.
Yeah.
Fifth if you count Heather. And
He's the second of the youngest from my natural born children, not counting my daughter. So he's the third from the youngest.
I see the Gators blanket behind you.
Yeah, I put that there just for this.
Nice.
I gave my friend my hearing aids. I had 2 hearing aids, and I said, I don't use these. I've never worn them. I said, do you know anyone that needs hearing aids? And he said, I do. And I gave them to him. And his wife made me this quilt. It's really nice, man. It's huge. Massive.
Nice.
Massive. Compliments of the VA. And the statute of limitations is expired, so I ain't got to worry about getting in trouble. I'll get him another beer if I want.
Nice.
I
George,
forgot what
what's
it
on
called to
your mind?
talk about. I was watching the East-West Shriners Bowl game today.
Oh, okay.
The East was winning 22-0. I only saw a Gator helmet one time, even though there was 4 of us. But they got second and third string. You know, everybody can't play all the time. So I turned it off in the third quarter. I got bored.
Yeah, I did not see any of it. I kind of lost track of that. I thought that was coming up on Saturday, but
that's a different one. That's the Northwest or something. This was
the
East
Senior
West.
Bowl. Yeah.
Yeah. Ben, give me something to talk about.
Price of tea in China.
Price of tea in China. Have you heard? They're gonna have a revolt, man.
Economic.
$8 a bag. Oh, wait a minute. He's thinking about eggs. Never mind.
Okay. That's been done before, revolting against tea prices, from what
Yeah.
I read in the history books.
American tradition.
They realized no one's really drinking tea anymore, so now they're doing coffee and eggs. You know,
Monster energy drink.
Monster Energy drinks are up 50%.
Monster Energy drinks revolt.
Only a couple 100 days till we can talk trash about football again.
Yeah.
Unless you're Miami, you do it year round. They're always back. I'm starting to really feel bad for Miami. How long can they keep this up, that fan base? Never. Have they even been to the championship game ever? It's like, God, embarrassing. 20 plus years in the ACC.
They've
God
been to
bless
the
them.
ACC championship game once.
Have they? Okay.
Yes. They
Good for
lost to
them.
Clemson 38-3.
I was going to guess it was Clemson, but damn, that was embarrassing. 38-3.
That was in 2017.
It's hard to believe, isn't it?
Yeah. It's been a while.
It would be interesting to know the true story of why they didn't somehow get into the SEC early on. You know, like, how did that not happen? And FSU, for that matter. Well, I wonder why they just couldn't get in. They should have been in the SEC.
You struck a nerve, George. Fuzzy Balls is letting us know that Miami's a 5-time national champion.
Yeah, I know. That would mean something if Alabama didn't exist and Ohio State didn't exist. Like, what are they bragging about? 5 national championships 30 years ago or whatever it was. Yeah, my stepmom's dad invented the railroad switch thing, where when a train came down, it made the lights go and the arm went down. Yeah. That'd be like me going around bragging about that shit. Did you know my second stepmom's dad invented the light road switch? Oh, fuck. I hope it doesn't come down to that. Anyway, I feel sorry for him. I don't see any hope for him next year. You know what I mean? That's got to penetrate the psyche of a fan base in a football team. And I knew it was coming, Mark. It's the only thing I was right about all year. When Miami was 10-2, I was on that guy Coach Coop's channel a lot, and I knew it was coming. And the Miami fans knew it was coming because they just always do that. They lost the next 2 games. I'm like, how can you beat Florida, LSU, Texas A&M, you know, like get everybody's hope up every year and then lose to Georgia Tech and Syracuse, or some North Carolina runs for 600 yards on you?
You know your history. Well done.
That North Carolina game will stick in my mind forever. 600 yards of rushing. Isn't that what it was? Mac
Yes.
Brown? Yeah, because Manny Diaz used to be his defensive coordinator, and he knows Manny Diaz. And he told, this is the story, you know. He said, "Hey guys, get this. This is going to be funny. Watch this."
That's right.
Amazing. But yet they just, it's a big clock. They just move around the hands. That Manny Diaz is now at Duke, and you know, they just keep moving. They can't lose these coaches. I don't care what you do. You're going somewhere. Nick Saban will hire you to be his analyst. I mean, isn't this something? What is this? Some good old boys club or something? Are you telling me there's only 100 people in the whole world that can script an offense or defense? You gotta be kidding me, man.
That's a good point.
I could do this shit. Hire me as your offensive coordinator. There will be no run plays unless we check down at the line. How about that? Show you. Or you know we're passing unless we check down. I could do this shit. $55,000 a year so I can get a small apartment, you know? I'll take the rest from my name, image, likeness.
Well, George,
Coach,
I'm about to hang it up here. It's great to see you. I'm going to answer some of these questions here.
Thanks for coming by. I mean, thanks for going on air.
Thank you.
Because
George.
we all
Always good
wanted to
see
know.
you.
We heard
Great
the
to see you,
news.
man.
Thank you, man. Good night.
It's our buddy George. I guarantee George has made more comments to the channel and the network than anyone. He has that distinction. All right. Yeah, we got to answer this on the screen. We appreciate fuzzy balls. The ACC media payouts go up every year. Yes. Well, the current contract, yeah. So we're going to, I guess, assume that that's going to continue with the extension. They do. So when you see the average, they'll report, if you're reading an article, okay, the Big Ten gets this, the SEC teams get that, Big 12 ACC per year. So understand that that is an average for the ACC that is ascending. Is it ascending substantially? Not really, but 2 or 3 million a year, something like that. So if it says 40 million, they're not getting 40 million now. They're getting a little bit more than that. They have passed the threshold of the average per season in the contract. So good point there. We're understanding of that, sir. ACC network is profitable and ACC network viewership. Well, is the ACC network profitable? How do we know that? I'm not sure about that. I'm not saying that it's not profitable. I do know that when the ACC network launched, because I was there, not that I was heavily involved, but I certainly had some, I was understanding of the situation, was there. Anyway, that, and I don't know where I don't know where ESPN screwed up here, because to compare the SEC launch and the ACC launch is laughable. When ESPN launched the SEC network in 2014, it was about as well done as can be, at least from the standpoint of results. They got the SEC on every major network, every major carrier, I should say. And when the SEC network launched in the late summer of 2014, it was in almost as many households as ESPN and ESPN2, within a couple million. At that point, ESPN and ESPN2 were in right around 100 million households was the high point for ESPN. And the SEC came in at about 95, 96 million. That's crazy. That's a crazy saturation figure for a burgeoning sports channel. But obviously it was backed by ESPN. Okay. I don't know if ESPN got full of itself, or the ACC was this much more difficult to sell, or they just thought, man, we nailed it this time. We can't go wrong. And when the ACC launched, the ACC network, I'm not going to call it a disaster, but it was woefully behind. We're talking, I don't remember the exact numbers. I don't want to say something that's not close. Like 16, 18 million come to mind, something like that. I'm sure that number's increased substantially, but also understand that when ESPN was at its peak at just over 100 million subscriber base, and it's come down since then. I think the peak was around 2011. The last I checked, which has been in the last 6 months, guess how many people are subscribed to ESPN? The peak was over 100 million. And understand there's always more and more customers and viewers. The population does nothing but rise. ESPN's saturation has gone from 100 plus million to like 71 million. They've lost almost 30% of their market share. Now, some of that comes via the app, YouTube TV, but in terms of cable subscribers, although it's a good question that I'm asking myself here. I wonder if that 71 million does include YouTube TV and Hulu and whatever else is carrying ESPN. I would think that it would, because they're just, you can watch it just as well as you can on a cable network. I think that's just simply people cutting the cord. A lot of people paying for ESPN that didn't care about sports, but they wanted cable. All right. And so Fuzzy Balls is letting us know that ACC network viewership, not ACC viewership, ACC network viewership has increased 5 consecutive years. Well, that's, there are loaded statements and there are loaded statements. So I just pointed out when it was launched, which was about 5 years ago, I remember this, viewership was extremely low. So that it's gone up 5 consecutive years is no shocker to me. That doesn't mean it's good. And much better than the Big 12s. Okay. Are you talking about the ACC network? The Big 12 does not have a network. You're talking about ACC games, which ties directly into this, folks. Be looking out over the next few weeks. We will launch the series that we do each and every off season where we break down college football TV ratings per team, per conference. It's a great series. We deliver it every year. Done it for 3 or 4 straight years. TV rating series right here at the Voice of College Football. So be looking out for that. I think you guys enjoy that. I think if we looked up your ratings on our content there, I think it's done pretty well. I guess if it doesn't, I won't do it anymore because it takes some work. But I enjoy doing that. I love that kind of stuff. Fuzzy Ball says the ACC network is next to the SEC network on channel guides. Is that on every channel guide? Number 1. Number 2, that doesn't really matter. Okay. Cheryl cut the cord 5 years ago. I just did, I left Connecticut in 2022, and then because of living circumstances, I didn't really need to make that decision for about 9 months or so. And now I have not purchased cable. I have YouTube TV, which I may get rid of after now that football season's over. We'll see. All right, folks, appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. Most likely on Friday, we'll be here for a live show to do conference rankings. I believe that's going to be here on Friday. If not, maybe we show up on Saturday. So just be looking out for us. Conference rankings. And it's not going to be just me spitballing. Okay, I think the Big Ten took over this year, number 1. Then the SEC's got to be number 2. And then, the ACC's terrible. They're 4, Big 12's 3. No. This is substantiated. Metrics, analysis, seedings, all of it. Okay. Disputed national champions. Give it a look. The links in the description section down below. We will see you soon.